Hello, my name is Cathy Gagliardi, and I'm a neurodiversity mentor and a family support specialist. I'm so excited to be having a chat with Pearl today.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Chiarenza, and I'm coming back with another Conversations with Pearl, and I'm so excited. You know, you go out in the world and you meet people when you go to the conventions or events and things like that, and they just speak to you, and you just like, I got to get to know this person more, and that's what today's show is about. I met our guest today at Podfest. Coincidentally enough, we're on a podcast, and I just got to know her and some of the other ladies that we were all hanging out. We did dinner a couple of times and just had an amazing conversation. So today, as a number one best-selling author and illustrator of children's book, Cathy Gagliardi has been able to donate her books to Ronald McDonald House, little library schools, and families in need locally and internationally. Like, how cool is that? I talk to you guys about always giving back. Her involvement with Costa Rican and Guatemalan schools and communities has enriched her understanding of children's emotional well-being. Through mentoring in the neurodivergent community, she has recognized the needs for the new program that she's developed called the Belly Flies Method. I cannot wait to talk to her about that. So, Cathy, welcome to the show. And please help me make sure I've said your name correctly.
It's Gagliardi.
Gagliardi. Okay, there you go. My last name's Chiarenza. So people go, what is that? Chiarenza. So, but I also understand our name is our sweetest thing. So thank you so much for being on the show, and tell everybody a little bit about you. I always like to start back, like when you were younger, what did you want to be? Like, what is what you're doing today? Kind of what that little girl growing up, that deep in her soul was like, I think someday, like for me, someday I want to be a teacher. And I did not become a teacher. However, I feel like I am teaching now, right? Like my life has brought me as a life coach to, that self-care specialist coach of teaching and mentoring others on that journey of, putting themselves first. So how was that for you growing up versus how you are, what you're doing today?
It's funny, all I wanted to be was a mommy, take care of little children. And another thing I wanted to be little bit later on was a missionary. And I just to help people. That's all I knew what a missionary was to help people. And so today I'm helping children and I'm helping parents and in the neurodivergent community. And I think that all my life I've wanted to help children, and I've done it in different ways, volunteering. And yeah, when I was after I had my children, I went to the children's hospital and I asked if I could volunteer. And they said, no, 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 we don't do that here. And they said, but you know what? A group of children are going in for a reading. So why don't you join them? And that my heart just went, I was so happy. So I went in there and I was with children who had spina bifida and Down syndrome and severe crippling. It didn't break my heart because these children were so happy and excited to see me, and they were sitting on me and playing with my hair, and they were all over me, and we were reading and having a lot of fun. And then when I left, I spoke to the receptionist again, and she said, "You are beaming. You have to do this in your life somehow." And I went into the car and I sat there and I bawled my eyes out. And I'm not sure why. I was maybe a little bit feeling guilty that I had two healthy children. And you know what? Why do I have two healthy children and these children are going through something so hard in their lives? And I knew that somehow in my lifetime I would have to give everything to help children. And so that's where I'm at now.
Yes, I say, look at where you're at now. Like a mom, I wrote down the things you said you wanted to be, right. Kids, like you're helping, you have your own kids, but like you're helping other children, and I feel like your missionary like work is like the books and things you're leaving it, for the children, like we said in Guatemala and Costa Rica. I think that it's just it's interesting how that threads in our life, right? Like it comes up, and it goes along with what I talk about with what I coach on soulful self-care. It goes into what I talk about in my coaching is that what's filling your soul? Like what is helping you put your cape on to fill that cup, right? And how are you overflowing your cup? Because sometimes people think we have to just fill our cup up to the rim, right? But no, you really should be going over the brim of that cup and like really like pouring in, because that's when you get to your sweet spot. I feel like that's when you get the sweet
Right.
spot. Like I'm really doing, I'm not just stopping here. Like I'm really giving, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. And again, without being that people pleasing, like without being like, I have to say yes. It doesn't mean you have to say yes to everybody to let your cup overflow. It just means that you're doing what fills that soul. And I love that, that's what you're doing. Like I got from you, like you're filling your soul. You're like, and if you guys are not watching, you're listening, your face like lit up, Cathy. Like your face just lit up just talking about it, right? And that's what we should be doing. Like when we talk about soulful self-care and how do we feel our soul is, what are you doing that just easily talking about it makes you brings that natural smile onto you, right? That's what's
Mhm.
so important. And I want to we're going to delve into some more of that in the conversation, but tell us about, for those that are listening that maybe don't understand, the neurodivergent, can you explain what that is and for everybody?
So it's a whole spectrum. It has autism and anxiety and depression and um ADHD and like anything. They say neurodivergent and neurotypical. Well, I kind of don't believe in neurotypical. And because I think we all have stuff and we all have challenges that stop us from doing things. But when I was mentoring in the neurodivergent community, I saw the spark. I had to be very patient and flexible and willing to accept whatever they're thinking as correct because they don't, that's correct to them. And it's taught me a lot in relationships how to do that. So um, it's very challenging, but I really feel the love for that, for helping children. It- Neurodivergent and not neurodivergent, it's all helpful for them.
So, as you're talking about, I'm thinking of a family member who her daughter was recently diagnosed with autism, and I think now I know there used to be like they had Asperger's, they had they say now I think way I'm understanding it, and you can correct me, is that there's like level one, two, and three. I'm just gonna put it in
Yeah.
my words of understanding. So I believe that she's on level two, right? So it's newly diagnosed, trying to walk the journey of like, is this diagnosis right? Is it, try that whole new diagnosis. So let's talk for a minute to those parents, those that are listening, and my audience is sometimes a little older. So maybe even to the grandparents that are listening, like what's when a parent first hears that, let's talk about the emotion for a little bit too. I'll let you talk about that. But then also, what are some of the like first questions that a parent or a loved one that has a child that's been recently diagnosed, what are some of the things that they should do, like those first steps they should do?
Well, first with the emotion, it's overwhelming because it's new and it's different. But one thing I have learned is when you meet an autistic person, one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So everybody's different. And although they're put into categories one, two, and three, they're it's very special to them. And I think what I found was to put myself into their position, into their mind, into their world, and accept what they're doing as what they're doing. That's who they are. And um, I find that how we see things, like how I see things, and how anybody else sees things is totally different. So when I'm in a discussion with somebody and I'm not seeing their point of view, that's going to cause frustration. But if you kind of open your mind and your heart up to um, relieving the frustration a little bit by just putting yourself into their minds, then I think it makes everything a little bit easier. It's a learning process, but that's what I've been finding that and with the belly flies method, that encourages all these different steps.
Yeah, so I like what you remind us too is like, when you first hear that, it's like so many emotions are going here, there, and you just have to let it process. Write down
Mhm.
questions, right? Write down questions you have. So next time you go to the doctor, and really it applies anytime you're going to your doctors. Like I have my younger son's having some challenges, that health challenges, and I'm like, okay, write down your questions. And here's some questions I have for you to write down too, right? So write down some
Right.
questions for them. And then that way when you go back to the doctors, you've got the questions and or somebody like reach out to somebody like you as well. Like reach out to somebody that can kind of help hold your hand and maybe,
Mhm.
guide you through the journey as well. Something you said too is like meet I got from what you said is meet them where they're at, right?
Right, exactly.
That's their world, right?
Yeah.
Here's your world. Your world is different than their world. So if you come into my world and I like to eat with my fork with the right hand, but you think I should eat with my left hand, it's changing that is not going to work for me because I'm so used to doing it this way, right? So I wrote down meet where they're at. I want to talk to you and again going to self-care because so many times when especially as families, like let's just talk about a family, let's take two partners that their child's recently diagnosed, right? And maybe there is a partner who's like I doesn't want to necessarily, I don't want to like doesn't want to believe it. Maybe they somewhat believe it because they see stuff, but they don't want to understand how to accept it. And they think that, well, because back in the day, let's be honest, Cathy, back in the day, we didn't have these diagnoses, right? So we made our
Right.
kids like, we really hone on our kids, eat with this or do this.
Yeah.
We really like, so today's world, we understand that these are differences that we have, whether it's a child with Down syndrome to, autism, Asperger, whatever we want, those that is for them. But let's talk for a second because I have seen it amongst friends where, one spouse is like, I'm all in, I'm going to help them. I want to help their world, make their world, help them, let's learn to accept their world and change our world to where we have to change it to help them, as well. But what do you do when you have, a partner or a spouse that's like, maybe isn't fully accepting, right? They're like, I think I see stuff, but I don't, I think it's just, because this age they are, right? They're just, 5 years old or whatever. But let's talk for a second about like how would you suggest that couples that maybe face that where one is like, okay, I'm 100% in, I'm accepting, let me help him. And the other one's like, I don't know. Because again, like you said, you walked out of the hospital and you were in tears because yeah, just like me, we walk home with these beautiful babies that thank God, knock on wood, they don't have anything happening. And then we look at others, our friends, our family. I mean, I had a cousin who had Down syndrome, we look at them and we're like, why me? But I always say, and if you're listening, I always say, I feel like God picked those kids even extra special. I mean, my kid's special,
Right.
don't get me wrong, but I feel
Right.
like they picked those kids extra special because they're going to do something to change the world. But I also feel like they've picked those parents because
Right.
they know those parents are like really, really special. So if you're listening to me, I'm getting chills as I'm saying this. You are amazing, and your kids are even more amazing. And I love being around, kids like that. So tell us, like, going back to my question, how does a family, and even if they already have kids, right? Some families have kids that don't have these challenges
Mhm.
that they're facing. What would you say to those families that maybe they're kind of like a magnet right now? They're not butting heads, but they're like, I want to accept, but I don't want to accept.
Well, first thing is I truly believe you can't change anybody. S- So if we all come together and as a unit and work on pre prefixing meals or pre making up signs to help the children communicate. And if there's one parent that doesn't want to accept it, that's their journey. That's their journey to take. And they have to treat their child as who they are. So even if they're not putting a label on the child, they can still come to the child's understanding and mental and emotional abilities and work with themselves and work with the child so that they become partners as well, but at a different level. I think that, yeah, I think that it's very hard to say, okay, now, no, you have to do this in the relationship to make this family work because they have to work through it themselves. Hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's like, we have to, again, goes back to you can't change, like you said, we can't change somebody.
No,
And I know as parents, one of the things we're doing is I want to mold my child to be a great citizen out there in the world. Sometimes they have to be molded a little differently, right? They have to be,
right.
there's going to be a little different thing, something about them to make their mold a little unique, right? And I think that's so important that what you just said. So if you're listening to us and you're up against that, just have a conversation with each other about, listen, we you accept the path that you feel, the journey that's your journey, but our child has got this journey, so how can we together mold our journeys while they're different maybe, but also knowing that this is how our child is, we can't change him or her, right? We have to help them,
Exactly.
mold them into the world they're going to be going into, because they're going to go into a world that's hard, and they're going to get to school, and there's going to, unfortunately, we still have children that are bullies in the school, and it's not, I hate to call them bullies, I feel like I always say that child is only learning, doing what they've learned, right? So they don't know any different, right? But they're going to come up against obstacles. So how can we support them? I always like to say to my friend, and in fact, the person I asked you about first, where she just recently found out about her daughter, I always I always love to spend time with those kids. And I think it's because my cousin, but she was older than I am, but I think because my cousin had Down syndrome, like I love spending time with her because it's like I feel like they look at the world, they don't see all the stuff we see, right? They're looking at the world like, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful place. I'm in such a beautiful world. And I just like, I love to sit in that space with them. I remember, like I said, my cousin was a little older than me, but I remember every Friday, I mean, I'm going to age myself. I'm going to be 60 this year. So this is back in the late 70s, early 80s. But I remember every Friday, I started driving, I think in my junior year of high school. I would go pick up my cousin. So she did a work program. So she would be at McDonald's. I'd pick up my cousin Elizabeth and I would take her back to her house. We actually, no, we'd go first to Godfather's Pizza when they used to have the restaurant Godfather's Pizza. We would have Godfather's Pizza. And then typically there was a new Disney movie out. So we'd go to the Disney movie and then I'd go back to her house. And we'd sit and we would watch the Hulk. And it was funny in a network meeting this morning, they brought up analogy about leadership and they brought up the Hulk. And I'm like, oh my God, that just warmed my heart. It made me think of my cousin, right? Because
Uh,
we would sit down and watch the Hulk. But the really cool thing was, Cathy, was when the Hulk changed to the Hulk, she was like, there's my boyfriend. There's my boyfriend. It was so much fun. I was like, oh my God, she sees this person, this character is like that we look at as going, oh my gosh, she's scary, it's dangerous as this beautiful, loving person. And that's what it struck me, and I think that's where my love for wanting to teach came from, was hanging out with her, because I looked at it going, she has no filter in this world. She sees everything as such a beautiful thing, person, whatever it is. And I think to this day, I'm like, I think part of that is because of her, that I sort of like led my path for people pleasing, to see people as they are, partly is her and then how I grew up, but then also like that caring piece. Like I really feel like spending that time with her would get me, thinking about caring. And I often would have Cathy friends be like, Pearl, come on, we're gonna go here, there, do this or that. I'm like, I'll catch up with you later. Like I would catch up with them after 9 o'clock so I could watch the Hulk with her and then be like, okay, Elizabeth, I'll catch you later. See you next Friday. And I think it's important for those that are listening to know that their world is such a beautiful world that while you think you don't want to be in the world, in some ways, I kind of want to hang out in their world, right? So hanging out with them and just meeting them in the world that they're at is so much fun. It's just so much fun. What do you think about that, Cathy?
yeah. Oh, well, I volunteered for Special Olympics one year, and that my heart just was grabbed. It was unbelievable. I didn't expect the emotions and the love. And one instance during that time was I was helping in the hangar, in the airport hangar. That's where they had the big, huge dinner dance, and we only had spaghetti and salad and that, but we ran out of spaghetti, and the coaches and the parents were furious, and all of the contestants or the athletes they didn't care. They just said, "Well, I can't believe I'm here." And we joked and we had such a good time. And I kept them like occupied until the more food came out. And they were just in awe of of just being. And then we had the dance after, and they grabbed me up there and we were dancing and it was so full of love where the parents and the coaches are worried about the child or the adult, um, that they're going to be hungry, that they're not going to win the race or whatever they're doing, that they're uncomfortable. And they didn't have that. They didn't have the anxiety. They were just pure love. And it just beamed all over them. And I learned so much. I find I learn a lot from all people.
Right. Is it and but that's the point, right? That's the point about, filling your cup, about having that soulful self-care in your world is like, how do you look at the world? Like, if we could take the examples of these amazing people and look at the world a little bit, even if we took a quarter of how they look at the world, can you guys imagine how our world would be so different, right? Just a little bit. I mean, like you said, even spaghetti, like they were like, "Oh, I don't have spaghetti. It's okay. I'm hanging out with my friends," right? I'm
Yeah.
like, that's so true. But we get so wrapped up that, oh, well, that's, they're going to think this way of me because I said no to them, or I'm not happy that I got this award. I want to go get the next award. Like we're not finding that happiness in that moment and really enjoying that. It's so important. And I love the work that you're doing and how you're, reaching out to the kids. So tell us a little bit about the belly flies method.
So the belly flies method, okay, the starting of it was a pretty tragic event that shot me into this. And it was I'd been working with this woman the day before, and we were putting together books and we were laughing and joking and talking about our kids and what they're going to be when they get older and we're laughing about all the funny things they did. The next day I found out that her son had taken his life that night. And uh, that was the hardest thing I had ever had to endure was being helpless, hopeless, and um, being like a zombie. Everybody at work was just like a zombie, crying and saying, why? And I went through this stage of thinking, how could he do that to his mother? His name's Matt, and hers is Karen. And I still, oh my God, she's an amazing person. She's funny. She's faithful. She's um, so intelligent and always learning and giving. And how could he do this to her? And then I realized that that's all he could do. There was no choice for him. In his mind, there was no choice. And he didn't want to hurt anybody. That's just how he had to proceed. And I went home that night, of course, to my kids and feeling like awful, just feeling awful. And I made them dinner and we did our homework and put them to bed and I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't do anything for myself. I went to bed, couldn't sleep, tried to watch TV, radio, nothing. Nothing would help. So I started writing, which is what I always did when I couldn't get stuff off my mind. And I wrote the Belly Flies book. And it's to help little children find techniques, find ways to um, work through anxiety, which they don't know what anxiety is. And it's to give them a voice. So they'll say, Mommy, I have belly flies. They don't know what's going on. But then it starts a conversation. And in this book, it's okay, there's an alligator who helps this little boy say, well, when I feel like that, the belly butterflies in my tummy, I call them belly flies, and I run and I chase a cat and I catch butterflies and I help somebody to succeed and it makes me feel better. And I talk to people and I write stuff down and it's all these little tips that if they could carry that on into their teenage years and adulthood, just naturally, not even thinking about it, just naturally carry it on. then hopefully it will get them through those blocking feelings, those emotions that completely block them. And so from that, I wrote some other books too, all towards self-love and caring and loving and working together. And I found that the books were going to the children, but the parents needed to know the message. I had to teach the parents to help their children because the book was just, it's a fun book and it may not have been getting the message totally across. So that's when I decided to write the Belly Flies method and go through each letter is a different tip, different like helping. So B stands for belly flies, and that's to help the child know that if there's something wrong, you don't know how to tell me, say, I have belly flies. And then we can start asking, well, where do you have belly flies? Where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your head? What color do you give it? And make it a thing that we can say, release. And eventually the story will come out. Well, somebody called me a name at school, or I have to read in front of the class and I don't want to, and different things like that. So L is for listen and like active listening. So you have to listen to what they're actually saying, not how they're saying it. Because if they scream, I want this, I want this, what do they actually want? Because that's what the question is. We have to find out what is causing this reaction, because they don't know how to get their message across. So they yell. And then we go down to love, and that's just I all the parents love their children, but if you feel like you're pushing, like just push the love into everything, into what they eat, and into I really feel strongly about sharing love through the whole area. I have a little story about that. One time I went into work and everybody was a rainy, miserable day, and everybody was gloomy and miserable and arguing and very pushy and rude almost. And so I thought, what's going on here? I don't understand it. Went home for lunch, and when I came back, I thought I did an experiment, and I thought I'm just going to go into every single room, into every single person, and imagine my love flowing to them. And so that's what I did. I just kind of pushed it into every corner of the room and every person. And I chatted with some people too as it went by. Well, within an hour, the whole place was going smoothly, happy. I heard laughter. It amazed me. I couldn't believe it. And so now that's really when I do that a lot now on the road. I do that a lot. I put love out there to people on the road, be safe and focused. And my why is yes and. So that's an improv technique. It's when you're doing improv, you always encourage the next step. So the person will always just add on to it. It doesn't matter what it is. It will just encourage them to keep talking. Yes, and then they could change it up, or you can be going one way. I saw a purple elephant, and the person will say yes, and then you say, and he was carrying a turtle on his back. Like just keep on going. And focus is F. So focus, I have a little saying, focus on calmness until settled. So if they just do that, sometimes it will just ease their mind to focus on something that they love and get them out of that position where they're anxious and irrational and not being able to control their emotions. And then just like change the focus to something that they really love. And then just say, okay, we're going to focus on this until you feel settled. And you tell me when you feel that cloud going away and nice warmness coming over you. You tell me that, and it will get them involved on. And if they have it like on their wall or something like that, they'll say, you know, mommy, I did focus today. I was worried and I did that focus today. So it's just a little help to remind them that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be anxious if you can change your focus. And lead is for L, and that's role playing, um, giving them jobs to do and showing them how to do it. So, like setting the table, you don't have to set the whole table and say, this is what I want you to do. You can set the dishes and say, this is what I want you to do. Put the dish in front of the chair, and then they can do it. Or have a picture of a place setting. Say, this is what I want you to do, this one place setting, and do it in little steps. And I think that helps them. I used to have to do that with my son. He used to say, can you clean the living room? And he would just look at me and say, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'd have to break it all down. And then he would be vacuuming, singing, and doing everything that he wanted to do. And then imagination is for and I love imagination. I think all children have imagination. And when I was mentoring the autistic fellow, we wrote books together. He wrote 5 books together, and his imagination was amazing. And I just had to pull it out of him, and we had so much fun. E is encourage. Always encourage them in the direction that you want them to go, and not saying no, don't go there, but try to encourage them to do what makes them happy instead of what gives them anxiety. So even if it's a job that you know they don't really like, if you find a way to make that a happy thing, maybe reward them with something that they love and say, okay, if they love watching TV, let me do this. I mean, we do that with all our children. We say, if you do this, you can watch TV, but we have to encourage them to find the best way to do it for them to be happy. And S is sensitive. So we have to be sensitive that everybody is different, that everybody with autism is different, and every part of their challenges are different. So we have to accept that and just be sensitive and be in their world. So that's my belly flies method, and I go into that in much more detail with little challenges and techniques and tips, games and
I,
things.
I wrote down focus on calmness until settled. I love that part, like focusing on calmness till settled. That was really important. And it
Mhm.
reminded me, my nephew, he's so much fun. He for Christmas, he wanted fish. So he's getting a fish tank. I'm like, he what's really cool about Sean is, the typical kids will ask for toys. Sean will ask for like, can
Right.
I have fish? Can I have fish tank? This really cool stuff. So my husband and I, we got him stuff. So I went to go visit him in February, and he has a little chair in front of the fish tank, and he sits there and he'll watch the fish. He goes, and I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm having some me time. I think he called it, I'm having me time, or maybe he said focus. I was like, this is so cool. And I just love my sister. She's probably listening. I talk about her on here a lot. I mean, I remember when I went to go visit them, and Sean was, I think, 3 or 4. And she's like, you want to come upstairs? We're going to put his clothes away. Right. So I was like, he's going to put his clothes away. She's like, yeah, this is a business. I run a house, but it's a business. I'm like, oh, I like that. That's where I came up with the CEO mom. Right. And so I went up there. She goes, it's not going to be perfect, but he's learning the act of doing, as well as learning that it's not all about me doing everything. I'm like, I love that. And now, like, when I go visit him and I will make pizza and whatever together. Well, a couple weeks ago, since I was there in February and he showed me about his fish, my sister-in-law put a picture online where he was making dinner for them. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay, Sean, when Aunt Pearl comes to visit, I want you to make me dinner, right? So it's just so important, the things you're saying, and with the belly flies method is that I think every parent needs this for every child because it is a way to communicate. I like what you said about the asking them, the questions along with the belly fight, like teaching them to ask them. And it's interesting that you shared that because I did that with my boys. At one point, my boys made a comment. One of my kids said, "You sound like grandma and papa." I was like, "Oh, I don't want to sound like grandma and papa," right? So I was like, so we created the code words, kind of like what you said with the belly flies, like where's, asking the question, well, where do they hurt and things like that. But I said, okay, we need a word because saying I am acting like them is a trigger for mom, and I don't want to be triggered, right? And so we came up, we're big Buffalo Bills fans. So we came up with the word buffalo. So if they would say buffalo, not only did it not trigger me, but it opened us up to have a conversation about, well, why do you feel that way? What about what I said
Right.
makes you feel like I'm being a buffalo? So instead of putting it on my mom and dad, it became onto the word, right? And so it was just really powerful, and it it changed how how they would look at me. It no longer became about I was acting like somebody. It became about their feelings, right? And so it taught them that your feelings matter, and even for your self-care at kids, they have to have their cup poured into and over as well. And so I love that you've created this method that also leads to conversations, right? So it's
Yes.
it's learning techniques, it's conversations, it's doing things that can encompass the family, the person, and the people in there. And then you were saying about the table, setting the table, like creating those steps for them, the small step things. I was sitting here going, all this applies to our listeners. Everything we're talking about applies to what you're doing with your kids, because teaching our kids how to do those things, we might say, okay, Johnny, go set the table. Well, like what you said about your son, okay, go clean the living room. Well, what's that mean? There's so much to
Yeah.
do in the living room. What's that mean? Right? It's like, okay, let me tell you, this is what I want you to do. And so it's really important that we remember that talking about being specific and setting examples and showing examples, like you said, like having something that's on a piece of paper for setting the table, or this is where the trash is. I think it's really, really important. I was really inspired. I went to see my grandmother in California a couple weeks ago. While I was there, I got to spend the night with my nephew and his young family, and I got to spend time with my grandniece Joyce. And she got up in the morning. I'm like, "Do you want to go? You want to go shopping?" And she's like, "Oh, we're gonna go shopping." And I was like, "Oh, I have to give a dollar amount, right?" And like, "Oh, I better give a dollar amount because, our words are like, if we're not specific with our words, like what we're talking about." And I was like, "Oh, it's a $20 limit." She's like, "Okay." So we went to Walmart. We went shopping and stuff. But I was having a conversation with my nephew when we were driving from the airport, and he was sharing how they're having some challenges with some behavior, and it's the being around other kids, right? And then also, what are you exposing your kids to on TV and such, right? So they had shared that they had put her on some restriction and everything, and she has her chart for doing chores and stuff. And so I watched on that Sunday, she did her chores. No, she didn't. A lot of times kids will be like, "I gotta do my chores." She didn't. She did it without anything said or anything. And then later on, something that my niece did, and I have to tell her this, I haven't had a chance to tell her this, was she affirmed how my grandniece, had done everything without any, pushback. She affirmed her behavior. And then later on that evening, we were talking, and I said, "Well, tell me about, like, what do you think is happening?" And they said, "Ever since we took away YouTube from her, and it's been better." And I'm like, "Well, what about YouTube?" I'm like, I didn't understand, right? Like, 'cause my show's on YouTube, and what she was explaining was the reality TV of families on YouTube. We have all these families since COVID. They're out on the road, they're in these buses. I mean, I've got a great friend, and she's in a bus with her family. They're traveling the country. So in her mind, in my grandniece's mind, she's seeing, oh, look what all these families are doing. Why aren't we doing that? but they're not showing the real stuff. They're not showing
Right.
the, oh, they got to do their schoolwork. Oh, they got to do their, chores too. So she said that they end up taking away the YouTube, and it's been a huge difference in that behavior. So I share that to say, like, what we're talking is setting examples, helping, I feel like our kids are so exposed to so much. And, my big thing is talking about those soulful self-care here is like, we have to teach our kids what self-care is, including limiting ourselves to what we're exposing ourselves on TV or people and things like that. And so I'd love to, Cathy, what are your thoughts on some of that?
I really feel that that children take away different things from TV and from their friends. They can be put into different situation or same situation and take different things away from it. So what I would do when with my kids was when they came home, I would say, what made you laugh? What made you smile? What made you angry? What made you feel nervous? And this is before the belly flies method. I wish I would have had that then, but they they told me different things. I mean, the two boys, and they say, "Yeah, I knew, I saw that happen too, but I thought it was hilarious." And the other boy said, "Really, that made me feel like crying." And so I really had to listen to them and find out what they're getting from their friends and what they're getting from me and TV and everything, because it was affecting them different ways. We could be watching a show, which I thought was family show. One child couldn't sleep that night. The other one didn't even bother him at all. Like it's so different for each child. But I think if you put limitations on it and which children may not admit to this, but they love limitations. They feel safe. And I think if you put limitations on it and say you're safe in this spot, like whatever, we could talk about anything that you want to talk about. And I had an experience with my son's teacher. She said, don't keep asking him questions, because it seemed like, he would say, well, she yelled at this little child. And then I would, talk to the parents and say, how's your child doing? And that was a no-no, right? But it affected my kid. Her yelling at someone else affected my kid, so I had to address it. And I knew that that was very important to find out how things affected them individually and give them
Yeah,
guidelines.
I like how
And
you asked them the question, right? That, like, asking that question, those, what made you smile? What made you happy? I think, and to those that are listening to have kids, I think that's so important. It's like, ask questions that they'll understand and they'll answer, I think that's really important. Yeah.
yeah, if you say, how was your day? It's too big.
Yeah.
Of course, they're just gonna, I was the same way. It was great, or yeah, it was all right, whatever. I don't know. But when you ask them, it just makes them think about the day. Say, oh yeah, I remember this happened. Yeah. So yeah, we had a lot of conversations over that.
I love that. I'm looking at the time. We got about 15 minutes left. So, Cathy, what do you have upcoming for projects? Where are you going to? Well, first of all, tell everybody where they can find the belly flies method, where they can find that, and what are some of the things you have upcoming?
So if they go to bellyfliesmethod.com, they can give me their email address, and I will send them a free 3 episode support talks. So they could do that. I also have the course coming up for anybody who we can chat and see if it's a fit to help to learn about the belly flies method and go into detail. And I'm in the process of writing a book because I love to write. So people have it in front of them and they can work with that. Um, and I'm still writing children's books.
I love that. I love that. So you guys, we'll put that in all the show notes so they can find you and click and do all that as well. So tell everybody, what's your favorite? Well, before that, tell everybody where they can reach out to you at.
Um, they can reach me at Cathy at bellyflies.com if they want to have a chat, or just go to bellyfliesmethod.com.
All right, awesome. So we'll add that to the chat too. So I can't let you go without asking, what's your favorite thing to do for self-care, Cathy, that truly fills your soul, that you're doing it just for you?
Mhm. Um, well, I live out in the country, and just going to the pond to see the mama goose on her eggs, and the ducks, and listen to the frogs, and it just kind of takes everything away and brings peace into me. And a lot of my books, I've gotten ideas just sitting on a log, or going for a walk and hearing all the sounds and the smells, and yeah, that really fulfills me. Yeah, it gives me energy.
I remember my granny, she lived in upstate New York and she had a pond across the street. We used to go all the time. And then in the wintertime when it was frozen over, I tried to learn ice skating, but wasn't the best for me. I didn't really enjoy it too much. But so all right. So listen, we have a few more minutes here. I'm having internet issues here, so I'm afraid we might lose each other. So those that are listening, if it's a little wonky, we're starting to get a storm here, and I think you're getting a storm too, right, Cathy?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things I told Cathy that we do is we have these cards called Better Questions, Better Life. So I'm going to shuffle the cards, Cathy, and I want you to tell me when to stop, and we're going to have you answer the question for us. Okay. So here we go.
Yep.
Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
All right. Oh, your card says, "What is my gift to the world?" So what do you think your gift to the world is?
Hmm. Um, I think my love of everything. I'm truly in love with everything. I think that will you know be part of patience and imagination, and it will, all those things will be affected by love. And I truly see love in everybody, and I think that is a gift that I can give to people, and hopefully make them feel good.
I love that. And I think that's we need more of that in the world. We need more of that love that I because I love when you gave that example that, you went home for lunch, you came back, you thought, this office needs some help. So you went out and you started putting that love out into the world. I think that was so powerful. I love that. Sorry, Mother Nature was making me sneeze. But I think it's powerful. And so if
Bless
you're
you.
listening, we have to make sure that we are giving more love in the world, but love to ourselves first. Like you need to stop
Yeah.
saying yes to everybody else. You need to really understand that the word no is a sentence that you can say as happy as you say yes. You need to understand that when you don't say yes to yourself, you're not going to show up with the love that you want to do for that event or that person the way you want to, the energy you want to bring. And the day before, whatever, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to go do this. So it's really, really important that you know that, because that soulful self-care journey is part of how are you filling up your soul? How are you overflowing your cup for you, not for others, but for you? And so, Cathy, I'm so glad you were on here today with us. I'm glad we had those conversations. And for those that are listening, if you want to learn more about Cathy, we'll put everything in the show notes. And if you want to learn more about your soulful self-care, all you have to do is go to wsliving.com/Shiro, and you will find all information about how to be part of that community. And I just want to remind everybody that it's listening and watching today that, We come into this world, we're a little rough oyster on the outside. When we really start working on ourselves and start pouring into our soul and overflowing cup, you are going to find your inner pearl to greatness. And I know you're on the way to becoming the Shiro that you are today. So I hope you have an amazing day.